All right, here we go, guys. If, good afternoon, good morning. Friday, March 27th. If you were not in class online with me this morning, Friday, then this video is for you. I would like to ask you to either look on your email I sent, look at the attachment, or look at iTunes. You were looking for Civil Rights Movement 3. For those of you who can nail the 3 on the court, which is very few of you. There you go. So you were looking for this right here, guys, okay? Rock and roll. Excellent. So there are 2 parts to this today. And of course, pause me at any time you need to. Basically, there is at the top there, you can read, of course. It says right here, where am I at? Review. So I want you to fill in as many of these as possible over a 5-minute period. And then, so I'm going to ask you if you would stop, so you can pause and you can complete this first section right here, because that's all the stuff we've done all week. See how many of those you know on your own. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and pause the video, fill that out, and come back when you're done. And if you don't know them, you don't know them, and I'm going to give you the answers to those. So when you're done with that, then we're going to do our little new stuff, and the new stuff is very short. I got a really cool, very short video for you guys to watch today when we get all done here. So there's not a whole lot of assignment. Okay, so everybody pause and hush. And then I'm going to start talking again. I'm going to assume you're pausing. Okay, so, all right. So I'm assuming if you're listening to me now, you have unpaused your video, and I'm going to run through these answers real quick. I did not mean to highlight those. So y'all ready? Okay, let me put this right here. Hopefully you can see it. Okay, so here we go. Plessy versus Ferguson ruled that segregation was illegal. It's too awkward. I'll just do it this way. Okay. Jim Crow laws in the South keep black Americans from voting. That's second one. World War II, it was the Tuskegee Airmen that prove skin color does not matter to ability. Jackie Robinson is your next one, the first African American Major League Baseball player to break that color barrier. What we got next? Brown versus Board of Education is the landmark Supreme Court case that ruled that segregation in school not legal. And then Sweat versus Painter was that was about the UT law student who happened to be black. The Supreme Court ruled that the law school they created for him was actually not equal at all, and therefore they declare Plessy not legal and fair. That's Plessy versus Ferguson. Okay, so where it says the actions right here, let's go over those real quick. Of course, Rosa Parks, we all know who she is already. She refused to give up her seat at the front of the bus, and then that leads her actions sparked the year-long number 2, the Montgomery bus boycott from Montgomery, Alabama. The Little Rock Nine were the 9 African-American students who governor, in the name of the governor, if you remember from your notes the other day, Faubus, F-A-U-B-U-S, Faubus. Forget the dude's first name off the top of my head, but that's all right. Okay, where are we at? So restaurants in the South, peaceful sit-ins. You guys got to look up good stuff on that the other day. Were conducted to end segregation. Of course, in that specific case, we're talking about restaurants. Okay, so that restaurant owner's name was Lester Maddox. He sold his restaurant rather than serve black people. He just said, screw it, I'm selling the restaurant. So that's pretty crazy, man. Pretty crazy stuff. So we got the Southern Christian Leadership Conference is established. They are led by pastors, specifically Martin Luther King Jr. or MLK. You guys are well familiar there, I'm sure. And then, of course, the last one is Governor, his last name is Wallace. Governor Wallace of Alabama. He's the one who attempted to block 2 black American college students from actually attending the University of Alabama. So there's your review. Cool. Let's get into these notes right there. Pretty short stuff. Pause me whenever you need to, okay? Call these more actions to promote equality. That first blank there, number 1, those are the Freedom Riders. Freedom Riders. And Freedom Riders were nonviolent, interracial groups. They're both whites and blacks traveling on buses across the South to promote and support the civil rights movement on number one there. So because thanks to the media, there's a lot of whites from the North that come down and they support the movement. They want to help out, and which is fantastic. Many of them, when they go to these different bus terminals to take a stop, they will be beaten and beaten awfully with iron pipes, baseball bats. You're going to read on that next week by white Southerners on more than one occasion. So very sad. Number two was, you've looked it up, but I put it in here again because it's so important. The March on Washington is number two. The March on Washington at the bottom here is led by, of course, MLK, where he gave his I Have a Dream speech. You had an opportunity to look at that last week, or excuse me, earlier this week. So, and that's the one that actually he gave that speech to over 250,000 Americans in 1963, and I argue that it's the greatest speech of the 20th century, or one of. It is way up there, and that is very special. Okay, so let's wrap this up here. So go to your next page there. It says number three, change comes, the new laws that are going to be finally passed by the U.S. government. All right, where are we at? So letter A, Civil Rights Act of 1964, led by President LBJ, the after JFK, who really was pushing for all this, John F. Kennedy, but it's led by President LBJ after JFK was assassinated. Assassinated, letter A. Okay, so then number two, the Civil Rights Act. So what does it say? It prohibits, here's the D word, discrimination. The Civil Rights Act prohibits discrimination based on anything, race, color, gender. Well, this one didn't talk about gender. Get to that later. Race, color, religion, ethnic origin, anywhere, hotel, library, restaurant, you name it, park, places where we work, no more discrimination. And of course, that's the law, but not everybody practices the law. Because not everybody practices and it respects the law, they create, you can see there at the bottom, the government creates the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to, and the word you want to write in there is enforce this, the law. They're the group that is the watchdog to make sure people are doing the right thing. Okay, letter B, other successes to make good changes for the civil rights movement. Letter 1 there, I, is the 24th Amendment, 2-4. The 24th Amendment eliminated poll taxes, so no more of that crap going on to keep poor people from voting. Letter B, number 2, they were called the Selma marches, S-E-L-M-A, Selma, Alabama. There were 2 attempts at this march, and the goal of the march, as you can read here with me, the purpose of the march was over allowing black Americans to be able to register to vote in the southern states. This is specifically Alabama. At first, the first attempt on the demonstrations, you're going to watch the video on this. The first attempt on the demonstration, the demonstrators were brutally beaten, and television films all of it. And the whole nation is a-watching. There is a second attempt. Days later, they are able to attempt the march again, and they do it very successfully, so you'll watch that. But again, as a result of those marches, and your last blank there is the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed. The Voting Rights Act. Okay, you can see my little in blue there, the little link. When we finish up here, it's a 4-minute video. It's on the marches of Selma. It's really good, and maybe I'll bet you a couple of you have seen the movie Selma. You'll be familiar with it. It's a great movie. Well worth watching. It's not like you have anything else to do, right? Okay. Number 3, so the Voting Rights Act of 1965 ends many of the tests to black Americans, these different things like the literacy tests and all those kind of things to keep people from voting. So beautiful. Finally, last thing we talk about is C. It's called affirmative action. Well, again, here's the problem. Despite the new laws passed that make discrimination in the workplace illegal, many of these employers still will not hire people of color or minorities or whatever word we want to use. Okay? As a result, LBJ boldly he signs, and what you want to write in the blank there, he signs an executive order. Executive order. And that executive order requires employers with federal contracts to hire a certain number of minorities to correct this imbalance. This is very controversial. More on that later. Heard me say that before, right? Okay. And because it was controversial about forcing people to hire people based on what they look like, not on necessarily the qualifications. The last one, the Supreme Court case that actually upheld affirmative action. The Supreme Court said that it was legal, in other words, so they upheld the executive order. That's all I've got. Monday. So again, today. Let's finish up with today. Watch that little link on that Selma video. That's all I've got today. I don't want you to do, even if you got, several of you still have things to turn into me. So if you have questions on what are those things, please, 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 please email me. I will respond as quickly as I can. The two big ones that will be graded by Monday are the question and answer. I know this is a repeat. The question and answer civil rights movement that was on Monday. That is due 3:30, so you can see that. The Cold War vocabulary review, also due Monday. Make sure you get that to me as well. If you did the Louisiana State Literacy Test from Wednesday, that was a bonus assignment. I did put the answer key on there. If you did it, hopefully if you emailed it to me by this morning, then it counts as a bonus assignment for you, 300 on the daily grade. But if you didn't, you didn't. So that's all I got, guys. Appreciate you. See you.